Hey everyone! While Robert takes a short break from the studio, we've put together some of our favorite moments from this year's Rich Dad radio show. We hope you enjoy the highlights.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad radio show, broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell, and it's just about to turn to hell. Right now, it's pretty pleasant, though. And I'm very excited today. Our guest is Lawrence Lepard. Lawrence, did you say in this book here that 40% of the money was printed during COVID?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
40% of all the money in the U.S. was printed during a few years ago?
Yeah, the nation's 220 some odd years old, and they grew the money supply by 40%. And then the guy who was in charge of that growth, Powell, said inflation is transitory. And then when it became clear that it wasn't, and they printed, and they had a 9%, annualized inflation rate at a conference, at an elite monetary conference in Jackson Hole, he joked and said, "Oh yeah, the good ship inflationary has sailed." He joked about it as though, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of sorry I screwed up, but no big deal." Right? Yeah. Well, fine, no big deal to him because he's worth $100 million. But how about the rest of us that have to struggle to get by? And it's absolutely criminal what these people have done to us.
So the poor middle class are getting poorer, and the rich, like you and I, are getting richer. So that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad 30 years ago. I said, you can't save this toilet paper. It's killing you. That's
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And the people who have access to cheap money and the people who are in a position to buy the assets, they're playing a game where the game board is tilted in their favor heavily.
It's called the Cantillon effect, as those who are. There's I should have saved it, but there's a line in here is that today we don't have capitalism, we have rugged capitalism for individuals. Rugged capitalism,
right?
But socialism for the rich and powerful.
It's so true. I mean, think about the 2008 example. Think about that example. I mean, my sister lost her house. Many people lost their jobs. There was widespread chaos associated with that bubble that they had blown to make up for the bubble that had burst in the dot-com stocks. And the bankers all got paid tons and tons of money. And, they should have failed. I mean, Lloyd Blankfein should be bankrupt, but instead he lives in a $60 million house on Long Island and holds forth on Twitter. And every time he does, I come back and counter him and say, "Shut up. You should be bankrupt."
That's exactly what he was saying. Gross universal cash heist.
Exactly. And so
these
people, they paid themselves $20 billion in bonuses after that bailout that saved them. So they were saved in a socialistic fashion.
Yep. And
yet all the regular people, we faced rugged capitalism where we lost our houses and jobs, Yep. So it's tragic. And I think that, there are turning points in this country where you can just say, boy, we really went the wrong way. But I think that, I think 2008 was another one where it became very clear that this was not a meritocracy and it was not a level playing field for all of us, that some people have unfair advantage over the rest of the people. And that's, that until we solve that, we can't live up to the promise, the great promise of America that was in the founding documents.
So if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it said the rich don't work for money, the rich don't save money. I drove people nuts. But this book explains why, because it's here today. Yeah. And Lawrence, I am honored to have you as my guest here.
As I said earlier,
well written.
It's an honor to be on your show. I mean, Rich Dad changed my life, and you're at the top of the list of educators in this area. So this is an honor for me.
Well, we are going to do a lot of work together because this is our time. That's what I keep saying.
Well, that's the idea. I mean, I think, there are 300 million Americans. And sadly, as we discussed off camera, I don't think a lot of them understand what's coming. And, no. And I know you've been trying very hard with all of your work to educate them. And I just am another voice joining the choir, I think, really. I mean, there have been a lot of other people carrying this torch, but I got to the point where I just couldn't stay silent anymore, and I had to write it down. The average person is good, hardworking soul. They do their job, they do it well, and they don't think about what's the Federal Reserve, what's the monetary system. In fact, when I was first writing the book, My wife, and I tested on my wife, I tested on some other people, and they came back to me, and their first question was, what's the Federal Reserve? And I thought, all right, well, I better explain that. So I really tried to bring it down to, first principles of how this whole thing works and why it doesn't work for average people. Right. And I think that's the strong part of the book, if I do say so myself. I want average people to get mad, and the first part will get you mad, because if you see the way they've been taking advantage of us all these years, it's hard not to be angry. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? Yeah. And then, but the second part is, okay, now that you've seen it, how do you protect yourself, right? And how do we all collectively fix it? Because this is not what America is supposed to be, broken the way it is.
Special guest today is Jeff Booth. I'd like to say a few things. The reason Jeff's important right now is this here is a 1964 Kennedy half dollar, and it's the last pure silver half dollar. And then from there, it went to fake money, and then we went to this stuff here, which I call toilet paper today. And then this here is a Zimbabwe dollar, and I think it's 10 million or whatever it is. And this won't buy you an egg. And I had the good fortune of being in Zimbabwe when it collapsed, or the bad fortune. So I've been in the best places at the wrong times and stuff like this. But there's also a silver lining. And that's why I want to have Jeff Booth on here, because his book, The Price of Tomorrow, fits everything in my belief system, because I'm a student of Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller. And I said to Jeff a while ago, he's a new Bucky Fuller as I'm concerned, because, we're talking about inflation today, but in reality, pure capitalism, the price should be coming down, not going up. But it's only going up because they're playing games with money. So when I read your book here, The Price of Tomorrow, prices should be coming down. But today, the gap between rich and poor grows wider, because every time you print more money, the rich get richer, but the poor and middle class get poor. Because when you print money, assets go up in price, but so does chicken, eggs, and housing. What would you say to people right now to prepare for what is already occurring? I mean, I think we're at the death of an old system. We're at the death of this system here.
So you I think you started on it in the last one, and when you got into Bitcoin, right? And what you did when you talked about Bitcoin, you talked about it in the U.S. currency, as it's 6,000 when you bought it, 6,000. Now it's way higher in the U.S. currency. So what you're actually doing is measuring Bitcoin in a currency that's been debasing. But currencies shouldn't measure other currencies. Currencies should measure prices. So if you measure prices in Bitcoin, you'll see all prices fall forever. You'll see it's perfectly matches. In fact, it's the first global free market that's ever existed, and it's imposing a discipline. The prices fall forever. It imposes a discipline I wrote about in my book. It imposes a discipline Bucky wrote in his book. It's the first time ever that exists, because it's open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And so
you're saying Bitcoin is imposing
discipline. It's imposing a discipline that we wouldn't choose. We wouldn't allow the existing system to collapse. We wouldn't allow. We think there's a savior there. We think there's Elon will save us. Trump will save us. This other. We think. And by the way, it's not those people, or some of it are better than others, but it's a system problem that cannot solve itself from that system. A credit-based system has to grow forever exponentially, and by doing so, it has to steal your money exponentially. The other system is because it's bounded by energy. It doesn't care if we want to print $20 trillion, $100 trillion. It doesn't care if we want to steal more money. It doesn't care. Every 10 minutes, it has a new block, and it's imposing a discipline. So meaning this house I'm sitting in right now was 300 Bitcoin 5 years ago. This house I'm sitting in right now is 20 Bitcoin today. This house I'm sitting in right now will be 1 Bitcoin within 5 years. It imposes a discipline by that energy-backed system. As long as it stays decentralized and secure, which I believe it's inevitable that it does, it reprices everything in the old system over time. In other words, you're never too late to buy Bitcoin. You're never too late to move your time from the system that's cheating you to the system that's helping you. Ever. You should learn why. You should learn why you should go into self-custody. You should learn why you need to protect yourself in the new system. You should learn. You should not trust a whole bunch of scammers in this system and centralize. But if you actually understand Bitcoin, you are part of a network that cannot be cheated. And you are you're part of an honest protocol that is imposing what Bucky wanted, imposing what I talk about, imposing it, that forever prices will fall relative to your Bitcoin. Now, it'll look volatile. You'll naturally think it's going up because most of your measurement is from the system that's debasing. But if you don't do that, if you just measure in Bitcoin, you'll see the perfect clarity of a global free market, the first global free market that's ever existed, that's having faster and faster prices falling for you.
Right. I mean, Bucky Fuller was a futurist, was considered one of the greatest geniuses of our time. And he predicted Bitcoin a long time ago because he was watching kids play electronic games. And when he saw the score being carried on top of which is the ledger, for the electronic game, he says that was the future. And I'm sitting there, I barely use my cell phone. I had no idea what it was.
If you said, and this is the thing that you touched with Bucky Fuller, that you're touching with me, what are we as humans? Like, truly, we're abundance creating machines out of scarcity. Any scarcity gets attacked. And it's all of the ideas to solve the problems come out of our brains. And so, of course, AI is going to expand. Of course, but these are all ideas that we come up with. And the output of those ideas should serve us all. And prices should fall in a free market. So anything that stops that is not capitalism. It's not it's not a free market. It's a control system. And so again, I come back to, you have a chance right now, if you understand Bitcoin, if you want to do the work, you can move to the first global free market that's ever existed, and no one can stop you. And it's your choice, instead of staying in the jail cell. Now you have to do the work, because there's a lot of people out there wanting to scam you and to sell you meme coins and everything else. So you have to understand that this would be a chaotic thing for your brain to understand, right? To say, but if you do the work, you can join the first global free market that's ever existed.
Right. And the reason, for full disclosure, we don't recommend anything, but I'm just telling you what I invest in, what I've done. Yeah. And the reason I did it is when I read The Price of Tomorrow, that was ephemeralization, a generalized principle. How do we do more and more with less and less? Yeah. That's what entrepreneurs do. The bureaucrats do less and less with more and more. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Federal Reserve Bank, does more and more with 5,000 PhDs, which explains why we're in trouble.
So what are you doing with your time? Think about what you're doing. You're expanding the free market by moving more of your by investing in us and investing more of your time into Bitcoin. What you're doing is moving your time from all of those people to something that can't be stopped, which is beautiful.
Is the end near? Yeah, I think it is. For decades now, I've watched the Fed, the banks, and the government play games with our money. They print trillions, devalue the dollar, steal your wealth through inflation, and tax away the rest. And behind the scenes, they've been selling gold and silver forward just to keep prices down, to keep you asleep. But the con is falling apart, and when it breaks, silver won't just go up, it could explode. I've been preparing for this since 1965, and I believe the reckoning could hit by September. Silver is still one of the most undervalued assets on on Earth. It's essential to electric vehicles, solar, AI, water tech, even military systems. But here's the problem. Supply is disappearing. Meanwhile, demand is surging. That's why I believe silver could double, or even 5x this year. But don't expect to hear that on CNBC. They want you chasing fake assets, trusting Wall Street, praying the Fed will save you. Don't fall for it. If you want to build real wealth, think like an entrepreneur. Own real assets. Yes, I like gold. I own gold, but right now, silver is the best investment in the world. If you're serious about silver, here's what I recommend. Text the word silver to 24999. You'll get my brand new 2025 Rich Dad's Guide to Silver, free from my friends at Priority Gold. Inside, I break it all down. What's really driving silver, why it's still dirt cheap, and how to buy smart before the next big move. Look, the system isn't going to fix itself. Take control. Start now. Text silver to 24999 and claim your free guide while silver is still cheap. That's silver to 24999.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. And gold is going through the roof. And Bitcoin is going through the roof. And the toilet paper is coming down. And we're going to talk about my favorite subject, gold. As JP Morgan says, gold is money. Everything else is credit or debt. And as you may know, Moody's just downgraded the American credit market, the debt. So the bonds are going bad in America. So what's happening all over the world, the Chinese and Japanese, anybody that has our bonds, are dumping our bonds and buying gold. So gold is going up. Well, let me say it another way. So this here is trash. And then just recently, Moody's just downgraded our bonds. And for years, bonds or debt was a tier 1 asset. Mm-hmm. But when they downgraded the bond, everybody says, well, America's bonds or debt or credit is no good. So the Chinese, Japanese, and the world starts dumping our bonds, and they're shifting to gold. So when you saw Moody's downgrade the U.S. debt, what did you think?
Wow, gold is going to rip. That was the first thing that I thought, and going, you couldn't be in a better sector. You knew Bitcoin's going to benefit from that. It did. It's up 10%. You look at gold, it's up because of that. But it's a reality. You look at what's going on in the European Union, as my old friend Doug Casey used to say, at least with the US dollar, you know who owes you. With the EU, it's who owes you, right? So you have all those risks also. So, I think when you have even the Wall Street titans like Druckenmiller and all these legends on Wall Street saying you need a little bit of exposure to gold in your portfolio, whether you buy physical gold or buy the ETFs or the miners or the speculations, these non-producers in the gold sector that will one day become producers. That's where your biggest leverage will be. You need some exposure to gold. Right.
So what I think is happening in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. And that was how many years ago? And I think that era is finished. We're now going back to a whole nother, the current, this is trash now. And so we're looking for a new form of money, which is why Bitcoin's going up and all this. Yet millions of people are still hanging on to this. I'd rather trade this for gold or silver or Bitcoin or saying it, I don't know how I just want to say it. These people are hanging on to this when it's going down. Would you agree with that?
Well, you look at the buying power of the dollar significantly gone down, and gold is, you look at whichever metric you want to use, housing, historically, gold is a way to preserve your wealth. Will it be volatile? Of course, it's like you said, the spot market will go up and down. China will make a move, or Japan, or, but yet, if you take all the sovereign wealth funds and the pension funds, less than 0.2% of the global assets own gold. Less than 0.2%. I don't know. I like someone like Druckenmiller, who's an absolute success. And if he's saying it should be 1 or 2%, imagine the buying power that will come in and raise the price of gold and all the miners, because as the price goes up, then your margins start going up. Now your costs will creep up. You're going to have cost inflation, like you said, because the dollar is losing its value. But gold is a great place to be. For me, there's that old saying, Robert, gold is the currency of kings, silver is the currency of gentlemen. Barter is the currency of peasants, and debt is the currency of slaves. So you want to decide where you want to be.
Right.
Personally, I love gold. Silver is a byproduct from a lot of copper porphyries. There's very few ways to place pure silver speculations. First Majestic, Pan American Silver are good places to go. But I just love gold. You can be a gentleman, but you're going to make a lot more money being with the kings.
Can I ask you, I hate to ask this question, but do you have a forecast what gold will be like, what the price will be 2026?
I get scared when Goldman Sachs, these guys that I've always been competing against, are saying 3,700 for the end of 2025. Like that's 7 months away. The gold price today, Robert, is incredible for us when we go and build mines. So I'm very happy if it doesn't go up. If it goes up too high, the difference between mining and, let's say, Bitcoin is I can't move the gold deposit. So I would be very scared in places in Africa, certain parts of South America or Asia. If you have a very lucrative gold mine and now gold's 5,000, these negative swap line nations that I talk about in my book, they're going to want a bigger cut, and you can't move your mine. You're stuck. You have nothing. Right. You have no choice but to buy. At least if you're going to be investing in America and you get the $5,000 gold, Utah's not going to steal the mine. Nevada government is not going to steal the mine. The Alaskan government is not going to steal the mine. The unions will fight for a bit more, but you have a lot of margin at that point. So I would like gold to stay below 4,000 just so it doesn't cause true chaos in the industry. But 3,500 to 4,000, you could not. It truly is a gold rush for the balance sheets of these companies.
Well, Marin, thank you. I'm honored to be a partner. And again, a full disclosure, we make no recommendations. We're just saying what we do. So I'm honored to be part of your project there. And thank you for contributing your knowledge to the Rich Dad fans about gold. Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Radio Show. We're broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And right now it's close to hell. It's hot as hell. But love living here. Today, as some of you know, silver is about to take off again. I remember it took off during the Hunt brothers when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. And there was a frenzy going on there. But silver right now, in my opinion, is the number one investment you can make today, at least for the amount of gains. And then, like I said, one of the best things about my business is I get to hang out with smart guys like Andy Schectman here. So we're going to be talking to Andy about the business of precious metals. This is my question because what everybody wants to know really. It's like I almost never sell. I save and I don't sell. I'm an investor, not a trader. So I'm not in and out of the market. But silver is finally taking off again. What is your prognosis, your forecast, your optimism, your pessimism on silver? Because I love silver because silver is an industrial metal. It's used, as you always talk about, strategically for the military.
Yes.
And it goes boom and blows up and disappears.
Right.
Whereas gold is always here. So I love silver because it's disappearing. Every EV has it. All electronics have silver in it. What is your forecast on silver? I think today it's about 35 an ounce, let's say.
Yeah, it's even a little higher. It's above 36 right now. It is 36.60 as we speak. It touched 37 the other day. It's the third time in history that it's been this high. There's been 7 attempts to break 35 since 2011. They've all failed. This is the first that hasn't. If it closes the month of June above 35, it's incredibly significant. I believe you'll get the hedge funds jumping in at that point. From a technical standpoint, that's huge. We've seen the weekly close above it, in fact, above 36. with all of the Fed announcements, like the non-farm payroll and the interest rate announcement that's coming up in a couple of weeks, where they're probably thinking of keeping the rates where they are. These are all big things leading up to the end of the month. We want to see it close above 35 or 36, but ultimately, the only word that comes to my mind, Robert, is asymmetric. Asymmetrical in this respect means super low downside and amazingly high upside. There aren't many assets that you can say that about. You could have said that about Bitcoin when it was $100 a coin, very low downside, amazing upside, looking back at it in retrospect. So, but I think that's where we are with silver right now.
The reason I like silver is I'm betting against the government. In other words, I don't trust the Fed. I don't trust, I like Trump, but can they stop inflation? I don't think so.
No.
So gold and silver are really nothing to do with anything else but inflation.
Yeah, that's right.
Inflation attacks.
It's right. It's a hedge against the stupidity of our monetary policy and the irresponsibility of our fiscal policy. That's exactly right. The dollar's down 9% this year. Silver is up over 40%. And so it's an environment where you're not buying gold and silver to become wealthy. You're buying it because it is wealth. If you own enough of it, yes, in those terms, you would be wealthy. Yeah. But I think this is something that's very, very important to understand. You're the one who I credit with. I've said this comment 1,000 times. You learn from Buckminster Fuller. You can't get out of the way of what you never see coming. And that's a very big problem here. People don't see the problem with the dollar that is coming. The de-dollarization trend is continuing, and that leads to a whole slew of other problems. At the same time, the Treasury demand is falling, which leads to higher interest rates, which leads to a slowing economy, which leads to all sorts of other problems. But when I look at silver, I see some very interesting things. I see the LBMA, London Bullion Metals Association, which is a T+1 settlement system, meaning T is a trade day plus 1 to settle. Your metal should be delivered to you or moving on the third day. The LBMA says, no, we're so backed up with delivery requests, it's 8 weeks. Really? T plus 8 weeks when I'm expecting my metal in 3 days. What if I own
they can't deliver? They cannot deliver for 8 weeks.
For 8 weeks. Imagine you own the Kiyosaki jewelry empire and you're making jewelry all around the world and you source gold and silver bars in London so that when you need to fabricate your metal at the call of a drop of a hat, in 3 days, your metal's moving to your refinery where you're making this stuff. Robert, I'm so sorry, man. We're at 8 weeks because the Bank of England says there's not enough in the way of trucks or manpower. Really? The Bank of England doesn't have enough trucks to move my gold and silver. That's a problem. That's a default. Or whether we're seeing in the United States where the largest single delivery of silver ever in the history of the COMEX happened in May. Or whether we're seeing China, which is the second largest producer of silver in the world, literally buying silver from all the miners directly in Peru, which disintermediates the marketplace. They're buying what's called doré and concentrate. Doré are the bars the miners make that are crudely refined, maybe 30 or 40%, before they send them to a refiner to be purified. And concentrate is a sludge, liquid sludge byproduct of that. They're buying all of that stuff in Peru, right from the miners, and then sending it back to China to be refined. They're paying double what the West will pay, but this accumulation is totally opaque. How much did they buy? What effect does it have on the price? On the supply, nobody knows. But this is coming from the second largest producer of silver in the world. Why are they doing this? Why has India bought over 900 million ounces in the last 5 years, more than the LBMA has in total? They've bought in the last 5 years, and now Russia, accumulating it for strategic purposes by the state, the first country to say that. Well, all of these things were happening when you and I were talking over the last year or two. But now someone within the Trump administration, thank goodness, is wise enough, I believe, to have said, listen, if we don't start doing what the rest of the world is doing, we're in trouble.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.